Is it Mr. Snowden?
Yes.
Thank you. Could you recap for us what the FCC requirement is? Did I hear you say there was an FCC requirement?
Right. There's a standard for our RF emissions, and that's what the FCC has outlined in their OET bulletin that both the Senator and I have been outlining.
And I guess the question I have is, if they have a standard, then they've chosen to address the issue because they think there is some question or issue that needs to be addressed. So while reasonable people could clearly disagree about what the science shows, I guess what I'm having trouble understanding is the argument that you're making, which is there is no issue here because the FCC has clearly chosen to address this as an issue worthy of their consideration. I mean, they've got a standard. They've got I think you said that, I mean, you made the case, and I thought it was an important point, that there was a margin of error essentially 50-fold.
Right.
But my point is that if there is a margin of error 50-fold, now we're arguing not about whether there's an issue, but about how serious an issue it is. And I think that's an implicit acknowledgement that there's an issue. And please feel free to suggest to me where the flaw in my reasoning may lie.
Well, I think in all due respect, I think the flaw is in the fact that you're assuming that the phones are getting to a point well above the 50-fold safety factor, which is never happening. And that is important because that's how we comply with the FCC standard based on the information here.
No, let me interrupt and make my comments clearer. And at this point, Senator Lennon, let me just tell you where I am on the bill. I don't think you can say there's no issue here. I think what you can say is there's an issue about which reasonable, well-informed, highly educated people disagree. And so then the question is, well, given the lack of clarity to date about what the science tells us, what do you do about that? And my own view is that you give the consumer the information he or she needs to make an informed choice. This may seem an odd analogy, but Senator Lowenthal and Strickland and Blakesley and Ms. Pavley know I've been working to date without success on a product ingredient bill. I call it the What's in It bill. I am trying to get manufacturers of household products to tell us what's in their product. Not because I think every ingredient is a problem ingredient, but because I think when someone buys a product off the shelf, they ought to know what's in it. And then if someone says, you know what, I don't have a problem with any of those things, they can go about their daily business. If others think there's a problem, they can take whatever steps they think are appropriate. But we can only let the market work, and we can only allow consumers to make good choices if they're informed consumers. So while I might have been uncomfortable with the language as it was originally drafted, if essentially this is a heads up to the consumer that there is in fact a device that is emitting radio frequency energy, and they'll want to think about what they do about that, then it seems to me we let different consumers make different choices, and that's what the market's about. And I guess the only other observation I would make is I think we also have to recognize that different folks have different degrees of sensitivity or vulnerability to particular environmental health issues. So if they want to exercise greater care, let them exercise greater care. But again, they can't do it if they're not on notice. And I think if the Senator's bill reached a medical conclusion or health or environmental conclusion that I didn't think was supported by sound science, I'd have a problem with it. But if the Senator's bill says, there's a debate going on out there, want you to know about this issue, and want you to make an informed choice as a consumer, when clearly there is a debate going on out there, and clearly the fact that there's a debate has been recognized by the FCC, then I'm harder pressed to understand the argument, Mr. Snowden.
I would disagree with your last statement that there's a debate going out there, particularly among the scientific community in the governmental bodies who are responsible for doing this. There's no debate with the FCC. There's no debate with the EPA. There's no debate with the World Health Organization. There's no debate with the National Cancer Institute or the FDA.
Well, then let me interrupt you again and say, so tell me why your manufacturers have put this information in their brochures. This is
to comply with the FCC standards.
And so your argument is that the FCC has promulgated standards why, if there's no issue.
Let me read what the FCC says in their
Please.
fact sheet here. It says, all cell phones must meet the FCC's RF exposure standard, which is set at a level well below that at which laboratory testing indicates, and medical and biological experts generally agree, adverse health effects could occur. So the FCC is not saying that they believe there's a problem. That is clearly what it says. This is the FCC fact sheet on this issue.
Then why does the brochure go beyond that? I mean, it seems to me that the difficulty here is that your folks are trying to have it both ways. You're telling folks in the brochure that they ought to engage in a certain kind of behavior for their own health and well-being. But then when Senator Leno tries to make sure that they have that information, you say, well, there's no issue with respect to their health and well-being. And if it's in the brochure, then you know, candidly, what I'm wondering is there, in order to avoid liability if and when a problem does arise?
There's a big laughter when I said to comply with the FCC standards, but that is why it's there. If you read the OET bulletin, it clearly states what we're supposed to say, and it gets to even suggested language as to what we should say.
And is the language that, and this is helpful, thank you, is the language that Senator Leno read us earlier drawn directly from the standard?
Some of that is in here, right here. So for body-worn operation, it's a quote. For body-worn operation, this phone has been tested and meets the FCC RF exposure guidelines when used with the blank manufacturer's name, accessory supplied or designated for this product. It goes on and on. There are several examples of how you should explain what body-worn means, and even gives a place where you can actually put in a specific distance.
But then if it's in your brochure because the FCC told you to put it there, your argument is we don't want the consumer to see the language that the FCC wants them to see.
No, that's not accurate at all. Our argument is that if anybody's going to do anything on this issue, it should be the FCC, not the state of California.
Okay. We, I think, have had a robust discussion. Any other questions from members of the committee?